It's 2003.
What, the ocean isn't big enough for you or something like that? Huh? You got a problem, buddy? Huh? Huh? Do you?
And tennis is in a weird place. The two men who defined the 90s, Agassi and Sampras, are basically done. Sampras has one last miracle run at the 2002 US Open, wins the title, and retires immediately after. Agassi is 33 years old, still crafty, but very much a veteran playing on borrowed time. There's no dominant star waiting in the wings. There's no Alcaraz, no Sinner, no Djokovic 2.0. Instead, the locker room is full of inconsistent talents. One slam wonders and guys who could catch fire for a tournament but couldn't sustain anything close to elite form for an entire season. Until the locker room door slams open.
Oh yeah!
Before 2003, Roger was just another promising kid. With beautiful technique and some questionable mental toughness, people forget this, but in his teenage years and early 20s, Federer was known for meltdowns, not mastery. He broke rackets, snapped at umpires, and was a walking emotional roller coaster. And then Wimbledon 2003 happened. He beats Andy Roddick in the semis, and he beats Mark Philippoussis in the final. And that is the match that officially launches the Federer era. And by Federer era, we mean the weakest era. Now before we dig any deeper into this take, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like the video, and drop a comment telling us who you think is the most overrated player of the mid-2000s. Now the phrase weak era isn't something invented by haters on Twitter. It comes from a very simple observation. From 2004 to 2007, Federer won 11 out of 16 major titles. Those are monopoly levels of dominance. That kind of control over the sport only happens under very specific conditions. Either the player is an alien dropped out of a spaceship, or the competition is having a collective identity crisis. Or both. And yes, Federer was brilliant. A true generational talent. But you can't separate brilliance from the context. And you can't pretend the field was the same he faced post-2010. And you can't pretend the mid-2000s looked anything like the big three decade that followed. So let's look at the evidence. Here's a fun challenge. We dare you to name the true generational talents Federer faced in his first 4 years of dominance. Not just minor stars or one slam wonders or good players, but we're talking generational, era-defining, all-time players. Yeah, you're right, you can't do it. Because Nadal wasn't fully formed yet, and Novak was still a teenager eating gluten and cramping in third sets. Instead, Federer's main rivals were Marat Safin, Andy Roddick, Juan Carlos Ferrero, Leighton Hewitt, David Nalbandian, Nikolai Davydenko, Fernando Gonzalez, Marcos Baghdatis, and so on and so forth. And don't get us wrong, these aren't bad players, but they're not the killers that the big three end up becoming. And even players that played within the big three era. Players like Juan Martín del Potro, Stanislas Wawrinka, Andy Murray, so on and so forth. And these guys aren't slam after slam guys either. They're the equivalent of the NBA having one superstar and a bunch of borderline all-stars pretending to be franchise players. And Federer just took over. So now let's walk through Federer's actual opponents in major finals during this period, because it tells the story more clearly than anything. In 2004, he walked away with 3 slams. He beat Marat Safin, Andy Roddick, and Leighton Hewitt. And then in 2005, he took out Andy Roddick, Andre Agassi, and loses in the semis twice, once to Marat Safin and once to Nadal. And remember, beating Agassi in 2005 is not beating Agassi in 1995. It's like beating Djokovic in 2025 and saying it counts the same as beating 2015 Novak. In 2006, he took out Marcos Baghdatis, Andy Roddick, and Nadal, and loses to Rafa at Roland Garros, as usual, as this is the era where clay court Nadal existed, but not all surface Nadal. In 2007, he took out Fernando Gonzalez, Nadal, and Novak Djokovic. Again, teenage Djokovic, not the cyborg he became, and still loses to Nadal at the French. So let's piece it together. Federer won most of his majors before Djokovic became Djokovic, before Nadal became multi-surface Nadal, and before Murray became Murray. Once those guys grew into their primes, well, Federer's major count slowed down. It doesn't erase his greatness by any means, but it absolutely changes the narrative of those early slams. And here's the part that casual fans never seem to understand. And don't get us wrong, we love Federer just as much as the next guy. But 2003 to essentially 2010 is a transitional era. The old legends were exiting, the new legends were entering. Federer sat in the middle, perfectly timed, perfectly positioned. If Federer is born 5 years earlier, he runs into peak Sampras, he runs into peak Agassi. His serve doesn't look as untouchable probably, and his forehand may no longer be the best in the world. If Federer is born 5 years later, he arrives in a world where Djokovic and Nadal and Murray are all battle ready from day one. He doesn't get that 4-year head start padding his slam total, but who knows, he may have still dominated. And instead, he shows up at the one moment in tennis history where the cupboards were empty. This is the essence of the weak era argument. And here's the true nail in the coffin. Once Nadal, Djokovic, and Murray all reached full power around 2009 to 2011, he stops dominating. He still wins big titles and accumulates a ton of majors. He plays incredible tennis, some of the greatest we've ever seen. But he's not the emperor of the sport anymore. Suddenly, Djokovic is beating him in semis, Nadal is beating him everywhere except grass, Murray is beating him on hard courts occasionally. Federer goes from winning 11 of 16 majors to winning one major in 4 years, 2010 to 2013. Coincidence? Or did the era finally get strong? Again, we want to reiterate, this doesn't mean Federer declined sharply. His level remained extremely high, but the field got so much stronger that his monopoly died. And the Federer stans always say he made the era look weak because he was so good and so untouchable. And sure, that's completely true. Federer elevated the sport. He set a precedent that Novak and Rafa could follow. He started it. And he maximized the gap between himself and everyone else. But here's the key point. True strength of era is measured not by one player, not by the top guy, but always by the depth of elite competition. That's why the Big Three era is so impressive. And the mid-2000s, as much as we don't like to admit it, it just didn't have the depth that the rest of these generations had. Not historical depth, not competitive depth, not multi-slam champion depth. And when the next generation matured, the entire sport went nuclear. Djokovic, 24 slams, Nadal 22, Murray 3, and elite consistency. Wawrinka 3, Del Potro, Berdych, Tsonga, Cilic, all legitimate threats on any given day. That's a strong era. The mid-2000s, it wasn't even close. So was it a weak era? And what's our final take? Well, let's be honest. Federer is an all-time legend and one of our favorite players to ever pick up a racket. He would succeed in any era. He would win slams in any generation. But the extent of his early dominance, the 11 slams in 4 years run, the historically lopsided finals, the lack of deep competition, unfortunately, we have to admit it's tied to the era. The mid-2000s, Federer was like a vacuum in the mid-2000s, sucking up everything that mattered. And if you want the simple summary, the weak era is Federer's perfect storm. He was perfect, he was ready, and the rest of the field just wasn't. And by the time they were, well, tennis history changed forever. But what do you think? Do you agree that this era was the weakest tennis had to offer? Or do you think we missed a crucial time period that was even weaker? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.